Welcome to the worldwide headquarters and studios of All Duke Sports Talk, where all Duquesne sports fans can unabashedly and fully indulge in everything Duquesne University sports. So, without further ado, let's get to it. And let's go Dukes!
Hey, Dukes Nation, welcome back to your favorite YouTube show / podcast. It's All Duke Sports Talk. As usual, I am Bob Healy III, and I'm joined by Rudy Longarini from out in California State. Nick Frost is sick. He's got that stomach bug that's been going around, so we'll miss Nick this week. And I know I said last week we were maybe going to get Noah Bueno from the men's basketball broadcast, and I haven't been able to get Noah tethered down to a time and date yet, but Noah says he will do this in the future. But I've got a hell of a substitute this week for Noah, and also to help us in Nick's absence is the editor-in-chief of the Duquesne Duke student newspaper. He's a senior sports information and media major at Duquesne, so he's one of mine. Real proud of this kid, Spencer Thomas. Spencer, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Spencer just finished his midterm. He had to do an hour-long show, actually, for his sportscasting class, so that was practice for this one, because we'll probably go about an hour as well, Spence.
Sounds good.
Before we came on before we started recording anyway, I was just talking to you and Rudy about the job that you and the Duquesne Duke staff did with your most recent edition of the student newspaper. So we have a lot of fans who are obviously alumni of the university, and they might remember their time on the Bluff reading the Duquesne Duke. So you'll probably notice a lot of these mastheads at the top up here. It's pretty cool. These guys did a great job, I thought, laying out the paper, and Spencer being the editor-in-chief obviously was a huge part of that. He, by the way, is the second sports major in recent memory to be editor-in-chief, which is really cool for me. I'm real proud of that. Not just that these guys are learning how to do sports PR and content, but real journalism. Anyway, it's really cool. And Mike O'Grady, who's Spencer's sports editor, is another one of my majors. And he wrote a really cool article in here too. I also really liked your works in here too, Spencer. But yeah, Mike O'Grady did a great job. He was sharing a recap from the NIT championship game in 1955, and I'll just read one paragraph of it, Spencer, if that's okay.
Of
He says, quote, "They had Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island too, all at their feet Saturday night in the town where an adjective is the least used item of the good writer's vocabulary," unquote, wrote Tammy Gray on March 25th, 1955. Quote, "The press box boys just couldn't use enough superlatives, while the loyal fans who made the safari to Peter Stuyvesant's Island said, quote, they knew it all the time," unquote, unquote. That was the first paragraph of Gray's story on Duquesne's 1955 NIT title, and Mike found that in the archives and included it in his column in the sports pages. Yeah, I just want to say from a alum's perspective, from a faculty perspective, super proud of you guys and the work this went into this. And also, as just a basketball fan, it's cool to look back at some of this coverage. In fact, so this young man here on the front, his name is Simplice Najoya, and I know there are fans who graduated when I did in the early 2000s. You remember
Simplice.
Simplice?
Yeah, I remember Simplice.
Rudy, you remember this guy?
Yeah.
We were not a very good program back then, and Simplice was, maybe 7 feet tall, but probably lucky to be 200 pounds. And I remember him one time caught me on the elevator, and I had to be 310 pounds back then playing football. And he comes up to me and he goes in this very thick African accent. He goes, "Hey man, how you get so big?" And because he was trying to gain weight for the basketball team. I just remember looking him dead in the eyes and saying, "Steak and eggs." I mean, just eating everything in sight. And he was like, "Is that it?" "Yep, that's it." But yeah, it's funny to look through and feel some of these memories. Spencer, is it the new website address? Can you give it to us?
Yeah, it's we got a new website for the first time in about 12 years. Debuted last fall. It's duquesneduke.org.
There you go. So you can see the whole paper on there, even in PDF format?
Yeah, so on the top tab, you just slide over on the right. It's digital issues, and you can just click on any issue, and it'll bring up a PDF of the entire paper that week, as well as just regular online stories, the way you'd read a newspaper online typically.
That's awesome. Cool, buddy. Thank you for sharing that. Rudy, you were saying before we started recording here, the paper looks a little different than it did when you were there, huh?
Yeah, it was smaller when we had it. And like I was telling Spence that that when we, I mean, there was no internet obviously in the 70s, and there was no so the only thing that we had as far as any kind of coverage was the written word, and the only two newspapers that were covering us was mainly back then the Post Gazette, and then the Duquesne Duke, which was really the only game. I mean, really explored the victories and losses that we encountered, and they were a godsend. I mean, in this media environment that we live in today, I mean, you can't imagine uh, what we went through. Anyway, just putting it out there.
Yeah, though the Duke continues to cover every game, especially being at the home games. And Spencer, you've got one more home game left to cover. Or are you going to be at the game on Tuesday against VCU?
I'm not able to make that one. So actually, yesterday versus Mason was it was senior day for the players, but I also considered it my senior day too because it was my last game covering in the coop.
Well, what a game to cover the Dukes
Yeah.
on Saturday, March 1st. We're recording this on Sunday, March 2nd. Defeated the Patriots, or are they the Revolutionaries now? I'm trying to recall.
George Washington's the Patriot,
That's right.
or George Washington's the Revolutionaries.
That's right. So
Yeah.
Mason's still the Patriots. That's right. Colonials became revolutionaries. So the George Mason Patriots visited the Cooper Fieldhouse yesterday, March 1st, and lost 85-68 to the Duquesne Dukes. So a resounding win. 17-point margin. That thing really spread open in the second half, thanks to back-to-back threes by Dinkins. I haven't had a chance to read any of your coverage yet on it or anything, Spencer, but you were there sitting up close. Was it as impressive as the box score and final score indicates?
It was, yeah. I mean, the just looking into some of the stats, I mean, George Mason came into the game having won 16 of their last 18 games. I mean, and we took away they were calling for an at-large bid. That's not happening for them anymore, thanks to us. Um, they Our 85 points was the most anyone had scored on them, and they played Duke at a camera. And Duke only put up 63 on them. So it was really impressive what we did to them, not only just from our perspective, but because it was a really good team. And now the Duquesne's won. They've beaten the top three of the top four teams in the conference. So they've shown that they can play up with the best there is in the A10.
And unfortunately, that loss the Dukes had at Dayton, by only 1 point, a game they could have won. That's going to loom large. Obviously, as the Dukes probably in all likelihood aren't going to get into the top four to get a double bye. But it does make you feel a little encouraged, doesn't it, that they can kind of hang with anybody. I mean, obviously, we're going to see Tuesday as the Dukes finish the home portion of their schedule on the 4th at 7 p.m. Back at the Coop, playing against the VCU Rams, because the Rams are sitting at number of overall first place in the conference now, 14-2 in the A10, ahead of Mason now at 13-3. So we'll really see where the Dukes stack up with these back-to-back games against Mason and VCU. Something that bothers me, though, guys, and I know, Rudy, we've talked about this on the podcast before, is the Dukes are just terrible on the road, and you're not going to be able to play the A10 tournament at home. The Dukes have a road record of 2-7 and neutral site 2-3. The Dukes are 9-6 at home, which is what is going into this 13-6 overall record, and has also helped them draw even to 8-8 in Atlantic 10 play, and it puts them in the middle of the pack in the A10. But I worry about, for whatever reason, the game just not taking, beyond Cooper Fieldhouse. Rudy, what are you looking at for the Dukes as they finish up the regular season going up against VCU, and then also they close the season out on the road gonna go back to my schedule here. At St. Louis at 8 p.m. on March 8th. St. Louis also at 10-6, right there with Dayton. They're in the upper six. Another big game to finish the regular season. What are you looking at for the Dukes in terms of shaping up for A10 play?
Well, if you look at the percentages, you probably got to think that we well, we got a 50-50 shot to win the next game, VCU, and then the game after that is on the road, and so we're up against it. We're not very successful on the road, but in order for us to go win the winning record into the A10 uh, championships, we gotta attorney, we gotta pick it up. It's the last game of the conference season and a regular season, and if you can't get up for that, okay, and the resulting games that are going to be coming up, then we don't deserve to be there. Okay. So all I say is that we have had two successful games and we have to build on it. And I'm going to keep on coming back to what I said before. Okay. Um, in a color commentary on the last game, they with the Duke's men, they said that there's 11 players that have 10 or more minutes, average 10 or more minutes. Our strength is our bench. Okay. And so that's where and we gotta hope, okay, that I don't think that I think we're gonna go 50-50 on these next two games. We're gonna look I hope and I think we're going to beat VCU, and that's a tall order all by itself. But
Oh,
I think that our home court advantage is going to carry us on that one. I think we're going to lose the next game, and then we're going to go into the turning. Uh, we've got to rely on the bench, and we hopefully, if we get to that fourth game, okay, we're going to be the freshest of any one of the four teams, and even fresher than any one of the one that played three games. Or do they the first four? Do they just play two games or three games?
It'd get three.
they'd have to win 3 and 3. Yeah, but that'd be
Right.
3 games in 4 days the way that they have it now.
So we have an advantage. Okay, we
Oh, you
have
know
the
what?
best.
Let me stop you for 1 second. That was last year. This year, there's no off day before um, the championship. So the games, the tournament goes March 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th,
Okay.
all the way through. But
Okay.
nevertheless, yeah, the double buys would have to win 3 games in 3 days. So Duquesne's looking at 4 in 4 days.
Okay, but that's where our bench, our starting 11, I call it our starting 10, if you will. Okay, because uh starting is insignificant with this team. Okay. Uh I mean, you put your best five guys out there to get to not get blown away. Okay. And you put your best, but I presume and I expect Drew is going to play a constant player motion, and who's going in and who's going out, and what he's done before, and is that he's found the two or three guys that either it be Cam Crawford or Dinkins or Edwards that can light it up. And one of those three guys has to play well, and the other two guys have to contribute too. They each have to contribute six. I expect each one of these guys to contribute 15, to try to contribute 15 or more points, and that's what I see it. And yeah, there it is.
Spencer, the other game we haven't talked about since last time we had a podcast was Duquesne won 67-62 at LaSalle on February 26th. That gives the Dukes 3 wins in their past 4 games. That's 4 wins for Duquesne in its past 6. Are the Dukes peaking at the right time? Is this another case of, the Dukes getting hot, led by a Trey in March as tournament time comes around? Am I dreaming too big, or do you see this as a possibility?
No, you talk about the similarities to last year, and that was something that Coach Joyce was talking about in the press conference yesterday. Um, where if you remember last year, sort of like this last week of the regular season, they traveled down to George Mason. They won there on a Saturday, and then they beat VCU midweek. They've got the chance to do the exact same thing this year. It was something Coach Joyce referenced as being he said they knew they were a good team, and then finally they were showing it at the right time, and obviously that led into the run in Brooklyn. Um, and yeah, I think they're starting to find a little more of an offensive identity, which was their big problem all year. Obviously, you were hoping going into the season that Max Edwards was going to be a guy that could sort of take over and lead you in scoring. Unfortunately, he's been a little inconsistent with that, and he'd be the first to admit it. But Trey Dinkins has actually started to really show that maybe he can be the go-to scorer. Especially yesterday. I mean, once he got hot, he was playing confident and he wasn't missing.
Yeah, the Dukes have had definitely their share of different players, right, stepping in to be like the game MVP. There was a point of the year early on, Jake DeMichael was the only player getting anything done on offense. Of course, he's had basically a season-ending injury, so we don't expect DeMichael to play the rest of the season. He'll take a red shirt. But then you had the resurgence of Max Edwards after a terrible start. You've had Matus Ronski be their leading scorer. Jakob Netjes has maybe arguably been their MVP. Kareem Rozier continues to be a steadying force.
Yeah, I just want to say something, dude.
Go
I
ahead.
mean, I've been looking at the message board, okay, the Duquesne message board, and there's a couple of guys on there. I presume they're guys, but I'm not going to name the names, the handles, but they're like they don't give Rozier any respect, none whatsoever. They claim he's too small, he dribbles all around, and all this crap. Okay, I just they don't understand that the guy is the leader when he's on the bench. Okay, on several games, I saw him getting up in front of Drew, saying, "Man, this is what we got to do, and this is what we got to." You know, he's a leader, and he leads by example too. Okay, so I don't understand these idiots on Duquesne message board.
Well,
Okay,
no one will ever accuse a fan of, being fair weather or a doomsday or that's just part of, I think, part of the DNA. But, Spencer, I was running through a list of guys who have, stepped up at various times. Jashawn Corbett, for a period of time. Dave Dixon's had a game that he won single-handedly earlier this year. It seems like, there's always been like last year, of course, Day Grant, Jimmy Clark, it was like one of those two every game or both, right? This year, it's like pick your poison. Somebody goes off and has a great game. But to me, anyway, it's been Rozier is always finding a way to contribute. 8 of 10 from the free throw line yesterday can't be
right,
understated. You know,
right.
Spencer, what are your feelings on, who's this team's best player? And is it going to be by committee again? Is there anyone who could step up and just explode with athleticism the way they're waiting for like a Max Edwards to do? Again, just looking toward the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, so for a while I would have said I wanted Max Edwards to be that guy. I mean, you just look at what he did at George Washington, you figured eventually he'll just shoot himself back into form. Um, and obviously he still is able to contribute. I mean, he had a couple of big shots yesterday, but I think yesterday convinced me it's Trey Dinkins. Um, there was a stretch in the season where I noticed all his best performances were in losses, and I was sort of, I guess I took note of that. That I wasn't sure if he could be the best player on a winning team, but that's changed lately. I mean, and obviously yesterday's the best example when they jump out to the lead and then they go down. I think it was 43-39 early in the second half, and it was his threes that completely changed the game. They go on a 22-6 run. Um, and yeah, I mean, because when you're down four there in the second half and George Mason's on a run, you're like, oh, are they just going to keep going? Like, you sort of got that feeling like, oh, this is a game that could very easily just fall out of reach. But I think it was Dinkins took over, and I think you got to ride that hot hand in March. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think
Right,
the
and I like his swag, like I mentioned before, man. The kid's got some swag, and yeah, we just Drew is pushing the right buttons, and I went back to the 5-game win streak that we had, and he was doing it then. But um, I think he's found. I think he's just. I think he's just going to play, these guys and ride them. The only thing I don't like about Dinkins is that he's a little bit Olay on the defense. Okay, people get by him a little bit too easily, going to the hoop, um, and that's the only thing I see negative about him. As far as Cam Crawford, dude, that kid has been the most, maybe just as consistent, maybe the most consistent since he's come off and become a starter. He's probably been our most consistent outside shooter. I mean, what is he, 42, 45%?
He's 44% from three.
40. I mean, you got to feed this guy. I mean, so yeah.
Who's your MVP right now, Rudy?
Well,
It's hard to answer.
you gotta go, my man, the unicorn, Nexus. He is the man. He is the glue. Even though yesterday, he played a better game the game before where he made two phenomenal shots. They were all over him, and he put it up in the last couple of seconds of the shot clock and made it. And I think he just had one layup, but he's two steals. I don't know. I'm looking here. 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. I mean,
it always makes an impact. That to me, that's why. See, Netjes to me has been very consistent all season. He's always, there's not been a game where he has not had an impact. I think it's because he's such a, like you said, a unicorn with his size and his ability to swing. But it's funny because you look at the stats and you're like, oh, he's averaging 5 points a game, 5.6. You'd love to see that higher. He doesn't shoot as much as I'd like, but it's a team where there's a lot of guys are taking minutes. Spencer, who's your MVP for this season right now? Did you say Dinkins?
I think I'd have to go Dinkins right now. Obviously, it's gonna come down to March. And I think at the rate he's going, he's leaving a good taste in everyone's mouth where this is what they're gonna remember is his performance this time of year. So I'd have to go Dinkins, but certainly obviously Netjes has been outstanding in the on the defensive end. And Rudy, you sort of mentioned how Dinkins can get beat a little bit on defense, but when you've got Netjes, I think they have enough athletics.
right. Netjes covers up for a lot of weaknesses that we have on defense. He slides so well. His feet movement on defense to be able to cover such a wide and it's a combination of his footwork with his reach. And dude, I'm telling you, he's invaluable to us. I mean, it doesn't show up on the stat sheets like Robert was saying, but I mean, it is undeniable.
Yeah, it's a game of space and length, and he has that, and he can shoot, so he's always a danger. And one thing that I don't think we should overlook about Netjes is he's 71% free throw shooter, which on this team it's like, wow, we'll take that. I mean, no, but here's something else that is frustrating. Trey Dinkins is their top free throw shooter, and with guys who have shot enough to make it worth measuring. And
Right.
he's still under 80%. It's just maybe we were spoiled with Day Grant making basically like 99% of his free throws, but gosh, guys, the free throws. I mean, Kareem Rozier goes 8 for 10 yesterday. Huge. He's only at 71 and change percent,
Right.
as a guard. I hope the free throw shooting regresses to the mean in the positive way, the way the baseball sabermetrics will talk about it, that we can't shoot this poorly for free throw all year. It just maybe now. Maybe hopefully at the right time, like this free throw shooting will get back to level ground and the status quo. But Dinkins does lead them at 79.1%. So, if he's going to score and he's going to draw a lot of fouls and he's going to get the ball and get a lot of minutes, that's a good sign. But, Corbett, 43.8%, more than half the free throws he misses,
Cam
Crawford.
That's restricted his playing time.
Sure.
Notice that Drew is not putting him out there, man. He's not starting. and he only got what 11 minutes this time around,
Right.
or averaging of the last two games, I think 10 minutes or whatever. Uh, because the opposing team knows, hey man, they people on the board were saying, he's got a weakness. He only drives to his left, and people are getting onto that, and so playing him that way, and so uh, you know, Drew, I think he's made a numbers choice. He's thinking, these guys are just fouling him, fouling Shaq all the time. Okay,
Right.
you
Right.
know, if and you're not going to have Corbett out there in the last 5 minutes of the game. You can't.
And yeah, well, 16 minutes for Corbett yesterday. Yeah, it's I hear you. Spencer, have you gathered anything from reporting, from being around the team, from post games about the free throw issues? Is that something where the coach is trying to just basically stay out of their head, not make it worse, or are they working on it? What's your read on that?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season when it was truly terrible and costing them games, I mean, I crunched the numbers on it at the beginning of the season. I think it was like 3 games that if you could shoot 75% from free throw, which was I think close to what they did last year, that's 3 wins they would have had that were losses. And so when that's happening, I remember I asked Drew, like, what as a coach can you do about this? I mean, they know what they need to do. You can't. And he just said, keep practicing. He said they've worked with Corbett on his form a little bit. I believe it was Coach Sellinger, Jules Sellinger, the assistant, worked with Corbett on his form. But yeah, he's just saying stressing repetitions from the line. That's the only thing you can do. And to your point about regressing to the mean, I'm a little worried that they've shown you who they are, and at this point, we just need to believe them.
Mhm.
Um, that free throw shooting we're not going to win any games at the free throw line. We just have to hope we don't lose them there.
By the way, we don't get fouled. I mean, we don't get fouled very often either. I mean, you know, uh, we are one of the least fouled upon teams in the conference, from what I understand.
That's correct. Yeah. And we're one of the lowest scoring teams, frankly, in the nation, let alone the A10. And so that's what makes the game against Mason so crazy that they put up 85 points, against a Division I team was on the bubble. That's just so encouraging. You wonder if that was, a red herring, if that was just something that's a one-off. We'll see. It's March. If you're gonna peak, this was the time to do it. So kudos to the Dukes, and shout out to the seniors, including a couple of my students, Drew Weil, Colin O'Donohue, classmates of Spencer's. Those guys, sports info majors, who I know are the co-head managers of the team. So kudos to those guys, and the work they've done with the program. It's definitely a really cool culture. You don't get much sense on this team that, and I think when you've won together, right, that the amount of guys who were on the winning team last year who are still with the Dukes, that builds a trust and a confidence and a been there, done that heading into the A10 tournament thing that I think gives them obviously a serious edge. And it seems like the newcomers to the program have bought into the leadership that was already here. So we'll see if that legacy holds up, and if that leadership holds true as the tournament comes into shape. The Dukes with, again, the one more home game to go on Tuesday, March 4th at 7 p.m. And then they finish on the road at St. Louis at 8 p.m., both A10 conference games. The Dukes sitting at 8-8 in the conference, trail 4 teams at 10-6, and then Mason at 13-3 and VCU at 14-2. I haven't exactly done the tiebreaker math, but with 2 games to go, I guess there remains an outside chance the Dukes could crack the top 4 if you win both games. I'm sure you need some losses and things to happen. So more than likely, the Dukes are going to end up in the middle of the pack and have to play in the second round of the A10 tournament. They're going to most likely stay out of that bottom. So Duquesne does avoid having to do sort of the play-in game. Let's take a quick look to make sure that's still the case. And well, the Dukes with 8 wins, the Rhode Island and Davidson are tied for let's see, 10th and 11th. I should say 9th and 10th at 6 and 10. So they're not really out of the woods anyway. But it's looking more and more like the Dukes, given tiebreakers and things, are going to end up in the middle of the pack. So most likely going to play in the second round to start the A10 tournament. But the tournament starts March 12th at Capital One Arena in DC this year. And then on the 13th is when we'll probably see the Dukes debut. The 14th would be the quarterfinals. The 15th, the semis. And then again, no day off in the tournament this year like there was last year. So the championship for the Atlantic 10 men's basketball season will be on Sunday, March 16th at 1 p.m. on CBS. We'll have another broadcast before that, another podcast before that. So we'll do another preview of the A10 tournament after the Dukes finish their regular season this coming week. So pivoting now to the women's basketball team, the Duquesne ladies, not so fortunate yesterday, March 1st, losing at George Mason 86-63. That's a really strong George Mason team as well. The ladies, they were 24-5 overall and 14-4 in the A10. The Duquesne ladies fall to 18-11 and 9-9 in the conference. Before that, though, the Dukes really beat up on the St. Bonaventure Bonnies, who are at the bottom of the A10 by a score of 74-48. That was on February 26th. It was an 11 a.m. tip-off at the Cooper Fieldhouse as part of Education Day. I went to that game because I don't teach on Wednesdays, and I just sat in the stands, actually pretty high up, and did some correspondence and some grading and things while the game was going on my laptop. And I was so impressed by the marketing that went into that, and the atmosphere. That is such a fun game. According to the athletics department, 3,115 fans showed up for that game, and about 2,000 plus of that would have been with kids, which is a great thing because you're building fans for the future. That is, according to Duquesne Athletics, a UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse attendance record, 3,115. It was really loud. It was very exciting. Megan McConnell was a rock star. The kids chanted MVP at Megan. It wasn't a solicited thing. They just did that naturally, and she really has put up MVP numbers this year. Megan is the only player, according to Duquesne Athletics, in women's college basketball who has 500 plus points this season, 200 plus rebounds, 100 plus assists, and 100 plus steals this season. Wow. Points, rebounds, assists, steals. I mean, the only thing she doesn't have 100 of is blocks, but she doesn't play down low. But yeah, an incredible another chapter in the McConnell basketball legacy. Megan McConnell looking more and more like a WNBA draft pick. She's on a few watch lists nationally for awards, well deserved. The women's basketball team, before I get your guys' thoughts on how they're shaping up, women's basketball team, they're going to head to the A10 tournament earlier than the men's. So the ladies will start the Atlantic 10 championship on Thursday, March 6th at number 8 seed Fordham. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to open up the Atlantic 10 women's basketball championship bracket. So the 12 seed, I beg your pardon, the 15 seed are the Bonnies. They're going to play St. Louis on March 5th. The 14 seeded LaSalle Explorers will play VCU that day. Loyola Chicago is the 13 seed. They will play George Washington. The Dukes are a second round day 2 team. So on Thursday, March 6th, the Dukes will play Fordham at 11 a.m. You can get that on ESPN Plus. Again, this coming Thursday. We're recording this on Sunday, March 2nd. The other games that day, number 7, Massachusetts, and number 6, Dayton, will await winners of the prior round because they are in the middle that gets the first round bye. Number 5, Rhode Island, will also play that day against one of those winners. The Dukes are set, though, again, playing Fordham at 11 a.m. on Thursday, March 6th. Friday, March 7th are the quarterfinals. Saturday, March 8th are the semifinals. And then on ESPN2 on Sunday, March 6th is the championship game. That tips off at 4 p.m. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on the ladies and how they're taking shape heading into A10 play. I'll start with Spencer. To me, Spence, the Dukes ladies are, they had a good season. They're inconsistent, a lot like the men. But for whatever reason, I feel, and I know the records shouldn't indicate this. The Dukes ladies were 6-6 away from Cooper Fieldhouse this year. They played no neutral games, 6-6 on the road. They were 12-5 at home, which is what makes them 18-11. They were also 9-9 or 500 in their conference, like the Dukes men are right now. For some reason, though, having seen the Dukes ladies a lot this year, I've actually seen them in person more than I have the men. I feel less confident in the women's ability to make a run in the A10 tournament than I do the men's, because I've seen the Duquesne ladies play the teams at the top of the standings in the A10, and they just simply don't match up. Am I crazy? Does it see it? It seems it's counterintuitive based on record, Spencer, but are you feeling similar or different?
No, you're dead on with that. I, I'm disappointed, and I was thinking that maybe they would be able to sort of run and compete with the top of the pack. Obviously, I mean, yesterday the defeat at George Mason showed that they can't really elevate to that level, and I think that does come
They've
down.
gotten blown out. They've gotten
Yeah,
blown out when they play these top teams.
yeah, and like that, and it was similar last year. They got that big upset win over Richmond last year, but it's that they had that 3 game losing streak in the middle of conference schedule. They actually had a pair of them, sorry. Um, but and the first one, every game was by a basket or two, and those were all to middle of the pack teams. And so I think they're maybe a little bit better than their record. Like they're definitely top end of the A10. Because you get a couple more games to go their way that came down to uh just a single point, but they're not top four. They're not top three. They're not one of those teams that's actually gonna be playing by the end of the tournament.
Then that's what really frustrates me because they are. You look at their record, right, and they are a good team, and they have this all-world player in Megan McConnell, who's one of the best women's basketball players in the world as far as what I've seen with my own eyes. She will be a pro, and I think she'll have a good career professionally. But when they played Richmond, I went to that game, and it was like watching. And I love the women's program. Listen, I'm not trying to be too hard on, but it was like watching a women's team versus a girls' team. It was really they had a whole head on them in every position. I've also watched the Dukes ladies get blown out at home against UMass, which is a team they shouldn't have lost that much to. Um, and then this game against George Mason wasn't really close. In fact, that game was
Richmond too, right?
the Richmond
Richmond.
game is what I'm talking about, where they played Richmond at home and got destroyed.
Yeah.
It was, and they were never in it, and so yeah, I'm less optimistic about their chances in the tournament, and it's ironic considering their record. But I mean, weird things do happen in March. It's a survive and advance single game elimination from here on out for them. I'm just, my hopes are guarded is all. Rudy, what are you thinking?
Well, I that statement that you said is true. That if you had to look at each the men's team or the women's team going into the tournament, who do you think is going to beat one of the top 4 teams?
Right. It's yeah, the
You
men's.
might have
It
to
ain't.
that's it.
It's not going to be. I don't think it's the women. At least the men have a fighting chance. Yeah, against even the top teams. They can keep up with anybody. So I don't know if I can say the same about the Duke ladies keeping up with the front four or the top half of the A10. That's like we shouldn't have lost to UMass, like you said. So yeah, unfortunate. Uh, we're just gonna have to hope that they have a hot game and that because I was looking at the box score for this last game. I mean, uh, who had 7 rebounds? The center. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind here.
Oh, I
Our
think women's
center.
game. Is that Keandra?
No,
Gabby?
our center, our forward, had 7 rebounds, but she was 1 for 7 or 2 for 7 or something. And Kiyako had a good game, 16 points, and McConnell had 22, her typical game. Okay, it's just that the rest of the team, other than Blackford and Kiyako, had lousy games. Hutchinson, that's who I was trying to think about.
Hutcherson. She was 1 for 11 from the field.
Right. I mean, so when you and then I was looking at the opposite thing. There was a girl on George Mason got 22 rebounds. 22. I mean, we're getting we just don't have size on the
Right, we don't have,
inside.
yeah, we don't have size. Yeah,
We just don't.
it's a shame that Caitlin Ammons got hurt and had to miss basically the whole season because she was going to play a lot this year, and she's all of 6'3". You know, she could have been a difference maker for them, rotating with Keandra Brown. You know, it wasn't obviously she got hurt, so it couldn't happen. You know, and ifs and buts are like candy and nuts, but you know they are outmanned down low in terms of size, and that worries me because the bigger teams they're just defeating them on length. It's Megan can only do so much. And, you know, Blackford has a great future here. Journey is literally a jet, you know, but when it comes to playing, you know, big girl basketball, they can't hang size
Yeah,
wise.
well, big girl. I mean, I mean that says it all. I mean, you know, we need some more big girls. Uh, yeah. Is that girl that you were mentioned? That young lady.
Caitlin,
Coming back next year.
Caitlin says she's done playing basketball.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an injury that's going to prevent her from playing the game. She's going to have some surgeries on it, and it was
Wow.
either finish the season and not walk right forever, she said, or get the surgery. Shame. She was my youngest daughter's favorite player, so bummer. But you know, they were recently honored on Senior Day as well, the Dukes ladies, and she was one of them. And you know, it was it's a good senior class. Megan is we mentioned this last last show, was that Megan will have her jersey number retired. Coach Burt has said. Um, and he has, you know, also said that Megan had a number of offers to go to other programs and turned them down to stay at Duquesne. And on Senior Day, when she kissed the D walking off the court, it was a really cool moment, you know. And this was a week or so ago. And she really has set a standard for Duquesne that you hope the class behind her will keep, you know, to serve as that example. And it's a shame that Megan is going to go her whole career here without getting to the tournament, you know, getting to see her in March. And I was hoping we could reward her with that. And you know, maybe it'll happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. But you know, it won't be a marker on her and what she's accomplished here. You know, it's a team sport. She's the best basketball player I've seen at Duquesne in all the years I've been watching. I didn't see Corey Halede. Megan is, you know, with her, you know, statistically, it's a tight race. Megan does so many different things that Halede didn't do. But, you know, Corey was such a scoring machine. But Megan is one of the more impressive women's basketball players I've seen in person. She's the best Duquesne women's basketball player I've seen in person, and we're going to miss her. Hopefully she's not a stranger. And when the WNBA comes near Pittsburgh, hopefully we can, you know, we'll all get a chance to go see her, because I think that's where she's headed next. Spence, have you heard anything as far as Megan's prospects in the future, what she's considering? I would imagine she's going to want to turn pro and play ball here in North America.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be offers. Obviously, it's tough with the WNBA just because there's half the opportunities there are because there's half the teams. But yeah, like you said, Cleveland's getting a team in a few years. They're bringing back the Cleveland Rockers. So
I heard about that. That's where her aunt played.
yeah, so hopefully she'll be able to follow in those footsteps. But yeah, there's certainly going to be offers. I'm sure she'll start overseas and sort of work her way up there. But yeah, the offer she's gonna have no shortage of opportunities once she's done wearing red and blue.
Megan's aunt played at Penn State for 4 years before going to the WNBA much later in her career, because you know, she had it didn't exist, you know, when she was coming out of college. So when Susie joined the WNBA, she'd already been an Olympian. She played 3 years in Cleveland, and she was the WNBA Rookie of the Year, if memory serves, in 1998. She was all WNBA that year, and this was in '98 after she had a baby by then. She was 32, at least one baby by then. But yeah, what a family the McConnells are for basketball, and she's just the latest in this great run. So good luck to the ladies, and we will be watching, and we will recap their season next week, you know, or we'll still continue talking about what might be in the future for them, depending on where they end up. They're not a terrible team in terms of net rankings go. They're 129th in the net rankings. You know, I don't know what their NIT status will be, WNIT, maybe if they get a couple wins in the A10 tournament. What hurts them is the Duquesne ladies are 15-5 against quad 4 teams, but everywhere else they're not too hot. 0-4 against quad 3, 2-1 against quad 2, 0-1 against quad 1. So they've stacked a lot of wins out in quad 4, but we'll see what the A10 tournament holds for the Duquesne ladies. We always talk about the football program as part of our show. Spencer, there's not much happening in terms of football news right now for the Dukes, of course. But having been there for 4 years and keeping an eye on the athletics program the way you did, former sports editor and now editor in chief. You did serve as sports editor briefly, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or was that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sophomore and junior year, 2 years.
So yeah, you've been following the football program as well. Do you have any thoughts on the future for the Dukes heading into next season, predictions, and maybe even the years to come where you see the program headed?
Well, I was just telling Mike O'Grady the other day how jealous I am that he's going to get to go and cover the game in Heinz Field. I'm just gonna call it Heinz Field. Uh, this fall. I mean, that schedule is really exciting. I'm happy that the program is sort of going in that direction of trying to get those games against FBS opponents, and to get to do it basically in front of all your home fans, which is what it's going to be. That's really awesome. And then I'm also excited about that Lehigh game that they announced on the schedule. I looked it up. It's the first time they've played a home non-conference game against an FCS opponent since 2018.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, usually they're just softballs at home, D2 schools and things like NAIA schools and things like that. So that's really cool. Back when I was playing Spence, we did play some non-conference home games against big school like VMI, and Lafayette. We won those games back when I was playing. We had a lot of success, but we have not. Yeah, you're right. I guess haven't thought of it, but we hadn't really scheduled FCS programs like that to come play us. We used to welcome Dayton to our home facility.
That was the last one, yeah.
Dayton was the last one.
Yeah.
Robert Morris, before we were in the NEC, used to come play at our facility too. And yeah, we had some great events, great home events that way. Actually, back in the day, we used to sit more fans with temporary seating. We used to put temporary seating up around the field for football season, and you could actually seat more than you can with the permanent seating now. Now with the permanent seating, it's the smallest Division I football stadium in the country. It's ironic, right? Because when we used to have no seating, we weren't that small because you could build temporary seating. We could get 5,000-6,000 people for a home game, which we did sometimes, which was kind of cool. Not the not the case anymore, ironically, but I'm not giving back the permanent seating. It is for what it is, for being a landlocked urban FCS school. It's kind of amazing the success Duquesne has actually been able to have. Before we move on to our non-revenue or Olympic sports segment of this show, do you have any favorite memories, Spencer? Football, men's, women's hoops, or anything else that you got to cover? It doesn't have to even be sports, actually, while you've been at Duquesne, some of your favorite stories, things you got to do?
It's got to be going to Omaha in March. I mean it was probably one of the craziest, but definitely one of the best weeks of my life. Between watching us win it on Sunday and then Coach Dambrot retires, I'm in the newsroom all day Monday working on stuff for that, booking flights, and then flying out to Omaha. And I mean, when I lived in Alabama until I was 9, so I was a big Alabama basketball fan, and I loved Avery Johnson, who was the coach for a few years, and he's in Omaha asking me what if I know the Wi-Fi password. That was just so many cool moments like that. I mean, it was incredibly hectic, and actually earlier today we found out the Keystone Media Awards were announced. And for obviously it's tiered by divisions. We're Division 2. I think Pitt, Penn State, they'd be like Division 1, but for Division 2, we won the award for best layout of our March Madness issue. It was they so that was really cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And yeah, that was just part of that crazy awesome week that I got to experience out in Nebraska.
Yeah, well, that makes me happy to hear because the sports information and media program was started right almost exactly the same time Keith Dambrot came to campus, and couldn't have been better for the Duquesne media department's program for the sports program that I was able to co-found with my mentor who's since retired, Dr. Bellamy. We had students like you basically in mind, and you weren't even there yet, but students who wanted to come cover sports full time as a full major, and we wanted to, I knew we had the resources to dedicate to it. We had the faculty to dedicate to it. I was obviously a big part of that, having been a former SID and a former journalist, and I knew we could do it. And I also knew because we had a Division I athletics department, if we could have that coincide with some athletic success, it would really take off. And the Dambrot hire, of course, look where we were 7 years later, right? When he finished his tenure here and we get to the tournament and win a game, and a student like yourself who took full advantage of everything that Duquesne had to offer, it just was set up on a tee and you knocked it out of the park. So congratulations again. It's Duquesne Duke, just duquesneduke.org. If you want to check out the 100th anniversary that Spencer and this team at the Duke put together, this is really cool. You can see the whole PDF on that website, as well as the online digital articles. And if you want to pick up a hard copy, they're still all over Duquesne's campus till Thursday. Recording Sunday, March 2nd. Right.
Can I
So
ask him a question? I was wondering if he had a chance to speak with any of the Hall of Fame inductees, like Norm, at the game. And did you, Robert, intermingle with any of them? Because I saw some photos that Jay Walters put on Facebook, and of got Norm at a table eating, etc. Did you guys get to do
yeah.
anything with those people?
Yeah, hang on Spencer, you were going to say one thing about picking up a hard copy of the paper.
Yeah, so actually, well, because we've got spring break, it's going to be 2 weeks. They'll be around on campus.
Oh, good point.
And then Maggie Patterson, she's on the publications board. She's talking about recirculating them again for homecoming weekend in the fall. So if you're not able to grab a print copy here first couple weeks of March, hopefully we'll get a bunch more printed later in October.
Very cool. So to Rudy's question, I think the 76-77 team was recognized. Am I correct that the on Chuck Cooper Classic Day at the game against George Mason? Were you there for that to see that ceremony?
Yeah, they brought him out during I think the second media time out of the game. It was really cool. I mean, they got a lot of guys. There's at least about 10, maybe a dozen guys, including Norm Nixon. That was really cool. I wasn't able to speak with any of them. They were up in the luxury area. But yeah, that was really cool. And then my favorite part was right after they all went one by one and greeted Ray Goss
Whoa.
on the sideline, and because he was there, he was already in his 9th year on the job when they made that run in '77. So that was really cool to see them all reunite with him. And like it was just the respect they showed. They literally formed a line going one by one to just show some respect to him.
Yeah, we're all incredibly lucky that Ray Goss is here calling games for the Duke still. He is a living legend. That's neat. I unfortunately was not able to make that game, Rudy, because I have my girls all weekend and we had plans. I was swimming with them actually at the YMCA in the South Hills. But yeah, I listened to it in the car, listened to Ray and Noah, and then I actually turned on the broadcast with Tim Benz and Alice Cannon on my phone as soon as I got home on ESPN Plus. I got to catch the end of it, but did not see the 76-77 team. That'd have been cool because Norm Nixon's still on my list of Lakers I got to get an autograph from. So one of these days I will. So we're going to finish up with the non-revenue team. We like to highlight one. I know I keep hinting at women's lacrosse because they have started their season, and I promise we will, but I was looking at the Duke Athletics schedule, and I got to point out that the women's track and field team had just completed the Atlantic 10 Indoor Championships this weekend. So the Dukes ended up finishing 6th with 53 team points. They had a number of student athletes get silvers. Unfortunately, no individual championships for the Dukes, for the Atlantic 10 this year. But the Dukes did have a number of medalists, get top 3. So shout out to those. Just so I'm going to go through them with you here. In the women's 500 meters, Hannah Seitzinger got a silver. And also in the, beg your pardon, I'm looking, the sports info staff at Duquesne, shout out to those guys for giving us a lot of info that we use for the show. The women's 4x400 meter relay team of Alyssa Willis, Eva Leatherman, Amy Allen, and Hannah Seitzinger, also a silver in that competition. And if you'll bear with me, I know that the pentathlon, Holly Walcott also got a silver in the women's pentathlon for Duquesne. So, a number of girls, young ladies getting medals for Duquesne for the A10 championship. So congrats to them. Duquesne with 3 medals, all silver at the A10s, including 2 on the final day to finish 6th in the team standings. The women's track and field team is still competing in the indoor portion of their season because although the A10 conference championships finishes up the A10 play, if you will, and 6th out of 14 teams isn't too shabby, by the way. So we're talking upper half. So congrats to them. They still have the ECAC Indoor Championships, March 7th through March 9th. That's coming up this week. So the indoor portion of the schedule is not done yet. That's at Boston, Massachusetts, indoor facility. I actually competed at that when I was a student athlete. You have to qualify for that by hitting a certain mark or time throughout the year. For the men, it's the IC4A, it's called. For the women, it's ECAC. The women's track and field for Duquesne is varsity, both indoor and outdoor. For the men, for track and field, it's varsity only outdoor. But those who compete for indoor, and this is basically a Title IX issue, but for indoor, the men can still qualify for IC4A and go as a club athlete. And that's what I was able to do my senior year. But the ladies will have those ECAC indoor championships March 7th through the 9th. And if you hit qualifying marks at that time, you can qualify for nationals. So there's that possibility too. So good luck to all the Duquesne women's track and field athletes. They open up their outdoor season March 29th through March 22nd at the 49er Classic in Charlotte, North Carolina. And of course, in the outdoor season, that's when the men will be considered varsity as well. So they will travel and practice and compete alongside the ladies. So the men will also have their season to look forward to, and they will compete also at that 49er Classic. So good luck to the track and field programs. Next week, I promise we'll finally get to talking about the women's lacrosse season as it has shaped up here in the spring. There aren't many other spring sports at Duquesne, so women's lacrosse is basically the only spectator sport. If you want to check that out, on Rooney Field is where they play their home games. And we'll do our best to get Noah Buono on next week. If not, I got a number of quality backups like Spencer out there who was able to jump on this week. So Spencer, thank you very much for filling the shoes of not only Noah, but for our usual co-host, Nick Frost. Really appreciate your effort. Congrats on the Keystone Award. I'll see you in class after break, buddy. Any final thoughts, guys, on all things Dukes? I'll go to Spencer and then Rudy. Go ahead, Spence.
Well, you mentioned the spring sports. We've got a new one, the acro and tumbling team.
Good point.
If I know they're bringing Baylor. Baylor's going to come here, and I think they were number one in the country earlier this year.
Oh,
So that's pretty cool to get a team like Baylor competing against us. Yeah, it looks crazy. I wasn't able to make the Gannon meet.
It was awesome.
That's something I need to do before I graduate. Is I got to get to one of those events. I know the Duke we obviously it's a kind of dry period, so we're super excited to be covering them every step of the way.
And you're right. Baylor is number one in the country for acrobatics and tumbling, according to the National Collegiate Acrobatics and Tumbling Association. That is March 11th at 6 p.m. And if you can't come to the Cooper Fieldhouse to see it, it's on ESPN Plus. It is free admission, by the way. And I want to, encourage the athletics department to open up the concessions, because I know I brought a bunch of girls. I brought 3 young ladies, including my kid's mother, to the debut meet, and there wasn't any concessions, and there was like, good 500-600 people there. And so, yeah, I suggest opening that up, because I think at the Baylor competition, this word of mouth about how good this tumbling team has been, they're 3-0 now, including that big opening win against number 3 Gannon. It would be really cool. Welcome this Big 12 program in like Baylor, and number 1 in the country. And let's see how our young ladies, who are mostly freshmen, stack up. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. That's the next home one. So well
Yeah.
noted out of Spencer.
I
Rudy,
wonder
any
when
other?
the,
Oh, go ahead, Spence.
I was gonna say I wonder when's the last time a number one in the country team came and played at Duquesne. Um,
In any sport.
in any
That's
sport. Yeah.
a good question. There may have been, yes, I do know when. So I know that my football team in 2001, when we had a mid-major ranking and a mid-major national title, the number 1 team came to play us in a bowl game at home, and we lost to Sacred Heart. But I don't know since if any number 1 in any sport and any kind of level of ranking has ever been at Duquesne since. It's a good question, buddy. And that's what the archives at the Duke are for. So I expect you to stick Mike O'Grady on that and figure it out. No, that's pretty cool. Rudy, any final thoughts, all things Dukes?
Well, we're coming up to tourney time, and we just got to turn it on, keep it up. And maybe the women's team can find some fortune and in the tournament, and both teams win the tournament. let's just put one front of the other. We just got to keep on improving. That's all.
All right. You heard it here first. Keep improving, guys. And look, there's room for improvement on both sides of the ball. And I am heavily encouraged, though, at the way the Dukes are looking here in the early part of March, especially the men. So we'll see. No one saw it coming last year, really. So it would sure be a hell of a lot of fun. All right. With that said, thanks again to Spencer and to Rudy. Nick Frost, get well. See you guys next week. Shoo, shoo. Rah, rah. Go Dukes.
Go Dukes.